Okay, what's your real name?
Joseph E.
What's the E stand?
Edward.
Keep this with your stuff.
Oh.
And 100 years from now, people will find that and they'll say, there you are, you're on tape 27. You're at the Portsmouth Public Library. And they can go down and look at you. When is your birthday?
Well, you may not believe this. I got. I'm a stickler for stuff.
You are?
But
I
I
got a lot of stuff.
But I don't have stuff. Stuff.
Oh,
Place. Like I have. That Hale picture in there. It's got something written on the back of it.
I don't see it.
Well,
is it above the mantle?
Okay, it's reflection. Yeah, you can't reflect. Okay, yeah, it's above the mantle.
Got something written on the back of it.
Well, I don't mind telling you what's written on the back of it. For goodness sakes, don't sell it at a yard sale. I paid $250 for it.
Sell it on the
don't sell it at a yard sale. And then I've got it inside that antique clock there. I got
same thing.
Well,
Don't sell
that.
it.
Different on that, but just different things.
You wouldn't have any trouble getting rid of that at a yard sale.
Oh my goodness!
Other thing.
I had
people want that.
John Zollner and George Zollner. Do you know them?
Well, I've heard the name.
Yeah, they've been in my home and seen. Oh yes, they lick their chops at it because it's. And then there's Harriet Zupel. Of course, that doesn't say Zupel jewelry on it, but the correlation between the two businesses that they love to have it.
Well, when is your birthday?
5/9/27. Born.
And. Okay, well, you told me your name and your birth date, and people call you Joe, or call you Edward, or call you
Joe.
Okay. Where were you born?
Portsmouth, Ohio.
Okay.
Old General Hospital.
You were born in a general hospital. Okay. But your present address here is in McDermott, is it?
Yes.
What's this address?
4246 McDermott Pond Creek Road.
Okay. And you get your mail from McDermott. They deliver, but it comes to McDermott, Ohio.
Yes.
Address. Okay. And in fact, we are filming now at your house. This is the address.
Yes, that's correct.
And your occupation, are you retired now?
I'm retired.
From what?
From Martin Marietta, well, presently called Martin Marietta, or as a USEC is called now. They changed names so many times. But,
How long were you there?
Oh, we were there about 43 years.
What did you do in your capacity?
I was a plant budget coordinator.
Okay. And how much education do you have?
Oh, no degrees, but a sum total of about 6.5 years of college.
Okay. Going to various training at the place of work with which you
No, very little. Just that I went to college.
Okay. And you're married?
Yes.
And you have children. How many children do you have?
We have 3.
Okay.
Patricia and William and Joseph.
Okay. Joseph, I know. He's an attorney. I'm an attorney. We know each other pretty well. Now, I kind of like to get a little genealogical line. I imagine that people who watch this might be interested in that. So what were your parents' names?
Okay. My mother's name was Naomi, and she was a Spurlock.
That's her maiden name.
Her maiden name was a Spurlock, yes. And my father was Irving Hale, and both parents were from Prestonburg, Kentucky.
Now let me ask you this. What was your mother's parents' names?
My mother's parents' names were Spurlock. Spurlock. And Job Spurlock.
Job, okay.
And Maud Spurlock.
Maud Spurlock. You know her maiden name?
And her maiden name was Langley, And she was a sister to John Langley, who was in Congress for many years from that district.
From the Prestonburg
From the Prestonburg district, yes.
Okay. Is it possible for you to go back any further than that?
Let's see. Let's go to my father's side. My father's mother's maiden name was Sloan. And I don't recall first names, but they were from Blue River, Kentucky, was the post office then. And, but I can't go any further than that.
Is this written down somewhere? Has somebody done a tree?
No trees. Okay. No trees.
Now, what was your father's parents' names?
Henry Hale and Daisy Hale.
Okay, and her maiden name, what was Daisy?
She was a Sloan. Okay, Sloan or Sloan? Sloan, yeah.
Do you know her parents' names?
No, I don't.
Do you know his parents' names? You know there'd be a test.
Yes.
Oh, you're getting an A. You're doing all right.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Not off the top of the head.
Now,
I know it, but I can't remember.
Okay. What is your wife's name?
Helen.
What are her parents' names?
Mine is, it's McDaniel now. She's remarried since her previous husband's death, and his name was Barber. Okay.
Now, you have 3 children, and the daughter's name is what?
Patricia.
And does she have children?
Yes. Okay, Tricia. She was married to Larry Moore, and she has a daughter, Shelley, and a daughter, Angela.
Okay. And you have a son named William.
Oh, William. Yes, William.
And does he have children?
Yes, he has.
Maybe we should let him watch this.
He has a 3-year-old by the name of Eric, and he has a stepson that his wife had in a previous marriage.
And Joseph, does he have children?
He has Carmen by a previous marriage, who is 21, and he has Dylan, which is approximately 3 years old.
Are you a great-grandparent?
I am a great-grandparent.
Which one made you a great-grandparent?
Let's see. Patricia's daughter, Angela.
Okay. And Angela had
she had a son.
What's his name?
And the son is Christopher.
Okay. Well, you did pretty well there. I'll give you an A. Let me write your grade down.
Christopher,
here.
Right.
Now, you told me about that. Now, you were in the service when did you go into the service?
Oh, I joined the Navy in 1945.
Okay. Did you join or were you enlisted?
No, I joined.
Or drafted?
No, I joined.
Okay. Do you remember the date you joined?
It was a rather unique situation. I joined, but I officially wasn't joined, and as the ruling was, our agreement was as such, that unless I passed the test to get into pilot's training, I wouldn't join. So after the tests, which then they backdated until the time of the test, which was in April 1945.
Okay.
Sometime.
Okay, so that would be your official, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay. And did you go into pilot's training?
Okay. At that time, well, I don't know how much you want to get into.
Well, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. At that time, they were still desperate. This is in the early part of 45. Of course, they still were desperately in need of pilots because we had some rather bad luck with quite a few of them. And so they had the Army pilot training and the Navy pilot training, which strictly, first of all, was just some college training.
Hi.
Who's this? Your wife.
This is my wife.
Okay. How you doing?
We're on video. Okay.
Well, come here. Sit right here. Yeah, I'm going to get you later.
I'm plotting flowers.
Okay.
But they had the regular college training as such, which was naval training along with the courses that you so desired. So after passing the qualification tests and such, and these tests were rather stringent. In fact, we had, and I can vividly remember because it's 123 out of over 1,100 is all passed in the group that I went in with. And we were went to college. At that time, they were in the quarter system, and we went to college on July 1st. And we were sent.
Where did you go to school?
Okay, we were sent. The 123 were sent to St. Ambrose College at Davenport, Iowa, which was, for those not familiar, Davenport, Rock Island, Rimoly, the Tri-Cities on the Mississippi. And according to the snafu politics of the service, the tenure there was only one semester, and then they wanted to break the group up. And doing it real politically, they decided the A's through the K's went to the University of New Mexico, and the L's through the Z's went to the University of Colorado. So as a result, I went to the University of New Mexico. And we went to the University of New Mexico, and we were to go there, and we went there one semester, and from there we were to go, of course the war was over then, and from there we were to go to flight training in California. But their niche at that time was that they wanted us to sign up for another 3 years.
Well, with the war being over, how long was your obligation for, right off at the beginning?
The obligation was same as a regular enlisted person. It was as long as required.
Okay.
As long as required.
Okay.
There, yeah. So I so chose to take discharge rather than sign up for 3 years at the Navy. So I was shipped after this quarter or semester, as you used to call it back then, to the University of New Mexico. I was shipped to Corona, California, which was a resort for the Hollywood stars, which was made into a naval hospital during the war, which is right outside San Bernardino. And I was discharged from there.
Okay. Did you work at the hospital there?
No, just
you weren't there long, I assume.
Probably a month.
Did you see any movie stars?
None that I can remember. No. You got to remember, in 1945, San Bernardino was no bigger than Waverly.
Oh, that's kind of small.
Yeah, very small then.
So your Navy career was kind of short then.
Yes.
The war ended. And then you mentioned something on the phone. What was this V5?
It was called the V5 program.
That was a program.
Naval pilots training was the V5 program. The Air Force, or the deck officers, was a V12 program. The naval officer training was V12. So they had a V12 and a V5. In other words, our local colleges around here that we might be familiar with in Ohio, Denison had a big V12 program. And Berea College had a V12 program going. And, of course, some of the other bigger colleges, or small colleges, those were one. And they, of course, that's what really sustained some of the smaller colleges during the war. Otherwise, they would have been closed.
How old were you when you joined up?
70.
When you got out then, were you 18?
I was 18.
That being the case, had you ever been away from home?
No.
What was that like?
No. Well, I take it back. I had been away to college.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, I've been away to college before.
Where did you go?
I went to college a couple places. I went to Berea College for one semester, and then went to Ashland Junior College for one semester.
Well, this is when you were 17 years old?
When I was
16
16.
you went to college. Okay, 16. Well, being in the Navy and going away from home, was that somehow different, or was there...
Well,
an adventure?
It was different in that the biggest surprise that I had was that no one knew where even, let alone McDermott, Ohio, but even Portsmouth, Ohio. No one had ever heard of Portsmouth, Ohio. Because
nobody had heard of Portsmouth?
No.
Imagine that.
No one had ever heard of Portsmouth. In the whole group I was in, because, as I said, there were people from New York, people from Boston, people from Chicago and Texas and all over, but no one knew Ohio was kind of outside. They knew Columbus and Cleveland.
Oh, yeah.
And some in Cincinnati. But
well, did your folks approve of you joining up? They didn't have a problem with you joining at 17?
not in this program, because they felt that this was probably the cream of the crop program.
Well, then,
I guess as any 16, 15-year-old, I was a little independent. I was quite fortunate. I had 2 appointments at one time before this B5 program happened. And Edward R. McCown appointed me to West Point.
Is that right?
Yes. And Jack May, who was a Democrat congressman from Kentucky, appointed me to Annapolis. So I bypassed both of them for the B5 program.
I see. Yeah. Well, then you were discharged. You remember your date of your discharge?
Don't really remember. It's January, 56 sometime.
Or 46.
I mean 46. Yeah. 46.
So how did you get home? Did you come on a train?
On a train.
Okay. On a train. And when you came on the train, did you get off here in McDermott or Portsmouth or?
No, my parents met me in Cincinnati.
Oh, in Cincinnati.
Yes, they met me in Cincinnati.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
No brothers and sisters.
Well, that puts you up to about 18 years old then, wouldn't it? Very old then. What are you going to do at 18 then? And what do you do?
Well, I'd had, in between college semesters, I'd had a little brush with my age as such, and I was able to work for the railroad by a little shy junior on the age, since my father worked for the railroad.
Okay.
And I worked in between this bout at Berea and Ashland Junior College at the Freight House in Portsmouth, Ohio.
What railroad was it?
Norfolk Southern. Norfolk Western.
Okay. N&W.
Yeah, N&W, yes. At the old Freight House, which is now a sporting goods store.
Wait a minute. Let's see. Where would that be? Is that there by the fire station?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Used to be Moore's Lumber Store?
Yeah, Moore's Lumber at one time.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. And that was what? Now, that was the N&W Freight House?
That was the Portsmouth, Ohio N&W Freight House.
What does that do, the Freight House? And
at that time, we must remember that there were very, very few trucks on the road, and 90-some% of the freight was hauled by rail at that time. So all the rail for this area, and I say this area encompassed probably from Arnton, Ohio to almost to Circleville, Ohio, to Sardinia, Ohio, and there was no boundaries in Kentucky as such there. It was all the freight was shipped to Portsmouth, Ohio. Then from Portsmouth, Ohio, it was dispatched out on a local freight train from Portsmouth to Cincinnati, and from Portsmouth to Columbus, and from Portsmouth up to Virginia, from Portsmouth. And at that time, of course, there was all the freight just went to the little individual stations. And what encompassed in this old freight house was the old muscle 2-wheel vehicles, where you use the hands like a wheelbarrow, and you loaded them up as high as you could load them and take them from one car to the other.
I see. Was that your job?
Oh, yes, that was my job. And in other words, you would have one car, shall we say that you'd have a car that come in from Chicago, from maybe a manufacturer, and this would go to 40 different spots. And you would have to put it to the 40 different cars that it would so be loaded into to go to those spots.
That sounds like a job like the kind of job that keep you in shape.
Oh, yeah. Kept you in shape.
For the period of time you were in the Navy, did you like that?
Oh, well, of course, I went to college all the time. So,
okay.
I didn't. We had very little regimentation. We had...
had to wear the uniform?
Oh, yes. We were truly enlisted, and, I mean, we were... modified. in other words, for people looking back at this, I was modified enough that I belonged to the old 52-20 club.
5220.
And the 5220 club was that after you got discharged, you could draw unemployment for $20 a week.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Weeks.
That's right. I remember that. I've read this.
Yeah. Oh, is it in writing someplace?
It is right.
Oh,
You got $20. All right. Well, that keeps you going back in those days.
That's right. That's right.
So here, were you enlisted or were you an officer? In Navy?
In the Navy, no, we were enlisted man in pilot training.
Okay.
We would have been commissioned at the end of pilot training, not at the beginning.
Okay.
Not until the end.
It depends
the real deal.
Well, there you are at the railroad. Did you like that job? How long were you?
Oh yes, I like that. But as I said, I was in between colleges and going back and forth in between semesters, and then I transferred to the section gang to keep in better shape, which was out on the gang, and I worked for a foreman by the name of Palmer. Mm-hmm. And Palmer had his headquarters and his home where the present Norfolk and Southern Railroad meets Route 104. 104 on West Portsmouth.
He had a home and office there.
And his tenure of track run from Portsmouth, Ohio to Rushtown, Ohio.
Okay.
From there, the fellow who was foreman at McDermott, his track run from Rushtown, Ohio to Otway, Ohio. Mm-hmm. So my experience on the section gang was quite great.
Was it?
I was a young fella and strong as an ox, and I was broke in right the first day. The old-timers threw me in a gondola rail car, which was loaded with creosote cross ties, and my job was to pick up the end of it and shove it over the side to the fellows down the ground. Me, not knowing creosote, I got burned, blistered, solid, chest and belly and all from that day.
When you say blistered, you mean that?
Oh yes, blistered, yes, from the creosote, yes.
And they laughed.
They knew what they done. So I had a couple days of not doing much, and being paid on the job. They took pity on me. So, well,
after that, I guess you'd have to wear gloves and stuff like that.
Oh yes, but it went right through gloves. I had gloves. Oh yeah, and through clothes. The creosote did. Went right through.
Did you ever go down to what they called the shop? Now, my grandfather worked for the N&W at where they called the shop, and he was a welder, before then a blacksmith. Mm-hmm. Have you ever been in that area?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, we're coming to that.
Oh, okay.
We're coming to all this.
The story's not over.
No, we're coming to all this. But in between, and we won't get into the years, but we had a little... I won't try to do it in a chronological order as far as everything that happened, but I will as far as since we're on the situation of the railroad, we'll go in chronological for the railroad now. So then the next job that I was able to land with the help of my father, of course, since that was his profession all his life, the railroad, was they needed firemen on the railroad. So I quickly took the runs and learned how to be a fireman. At that time, there was very few instruments to learn. I mean, gauges, a few of them, steam gauges and so forth and all. And
what does a fireman do?
Well, at that time, I'd say all of the road engines were stoker operated on the railroad at that time. I'd say in the 47, 48 time frame in there. So all you did was operate the stokers, make sure that the steam pressure stayed up, that you kept the engineer happy, and of course you watched out for the signals and you viewed the track. And
did you shovel coal?
No, that is all stoker.
That's called a stoker.
Yeah, that's a stoker.
Okay.
The only shoveling coal was I also then being a young man. And on they called it the extra list. I was not assigned a permanent job. I wasn't old enough to get one. I worked in the Columbus yard, and I worked in the Portsmouth yard. And both of those yards, which switched trains around to prepare them for over the road, they had engines that were not stoker fired, they were hand shoveled fired.
I see.
So all you did on those is you had to bank your fire and keep the fire going, keep the steam up on those. So so I had a few months of that.
Okay.
In my train experience there on the road,
learning the railroad.
Yeah. In my experience there, I consider it fortunate because we're talking now about history. Is that I did one time, since I was on the extra list, I didn't do it often, but I did fire the passenger run with the Powhatan Era, one of the 600 engines from Columbus to Portsmouth and back again.
You fired, what do you mean when you say fired?
Well, I was a fireman. You had an engineer and a fireman on the front of it.
Okay.
And this was, of course, this was a choice job of the railroads at that time. It paid about, for a fireman, about $20.50, and you made that in about 2 hours and a half.
Is that right?
Because you got a day's pay for the amount, if you were on a run, for the amount of time it took you to do the run. In other words, the passenger run was that long from Columbus passenger station to Portsmouth, and that was a day's pay. You got a day's pay for going back. If you were on a freight train, it might take you, if you had 100 cars of coal going up, it might take you 5 hours, but you'd still make a day's pay. Coming back, you might have empty, and you could do it in 4 hours days. If you didn't have, if you weren't sidetracked for a special train or this or that. So, but if you went over 8 hours, you got paid overtime.
Well, that's a pretty good job.
Yeah, so it was a choice job after that, the war there. They had a lot of freight movement and all, so it's... So after that, I had another bout with college and so forth and so on, and since my dad was agent for Laker, I thought that, well, I'd like to do that. So I was agent at a small stations on the railway.
What does that mean, agent?
Okay, in charge of that. In other words, I was in charge of that station, passengers and freight of that station. And I got a permanent job at Winchester, Ohio. This would have been in about 53 and 52, 53. And I was there about 6 months, and then I moved to Newtown, Ohio, which...
Where's Winchester?
Winchester's Adams County.
Right.
It's Adams County. Halfway between here and Cincinnati, almost halfway. And then I moved to Newtown, Ohio, which is just a suburb of Cincinnati, and I was agent down there. An unusual experience. I was agent down there. I did and got the permanent job. And the 3 days before I was to go to the permanent job, the station caught fire and burned.
Oh,
so
there's the end of that.
So no, they moved a caboose in, and I set up a new depot in the caboose, and they moved a freight car in, and that's my freight house.
All right. That's being innovative.
Yeah. So
where did Korea come in?
Okay, we like I say, we've jumped ahead of all this now to go up to the time frame. I'll go ahead with this now. So to go up to the time frame, and at that time, the largest freight hauler and railway express hauler user that we had in the Newtown station was Baldwin Piano Company. And Baldwin Piano Company had a government contract. And their government contract encompassed quite some delicate instrumentation, as you might know, being a piano manufacturer would. And so I became quite friendly with some of the personnel, and the Railway Express Company was a separate company from the Norfolk and Western Railroad. But they used the Express Company cars and the Express Company people on the passenger trains to haul express, not railroad workers. So as a result, they had to have workers in all the towns where they had the express stations, and the railway agent was a express agent. That was separate from your railway salary. At that time, they gave you 10% of the bill, or whatever the freight bill was, for anything you shipped out. They gave you 10% of anything of the freight bill that you received. And that's all that you got, whatever it was. So I was quite fortunate when I went to Newtown that in this time frame that they had a big contract and they shipped all their merchandise by Rail Express.
I see.
And
you got a piece of that.
The fortunate part was, to give you an example, as I said, this is in the 53 timetable. My express commission might run as high as $700 a month.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yes. My railway salary was $350. To give you an example, yes, right. To give you an example back then.
That sounds like a lot of peanuts.
Yes, that does. So I'd heard that I got it straight from the horse's mouth that they lost their contract with the government, and then the Enquirer got a hold of it. Cincinnati Enquirer got a hold of it, and they had in the paper that they had lost and there'd be layoffs and blah, blah, blah. And I had contact while I was still in Japan and Korea that the A plant had hit this area. So I'd written to the Department of Defense, not knowing who to write to, that I was interested in employment, and I'd never heard from them. But I immediately started to pursue that after I heard they'd lost the contract. Baltic Piano had lost their contract, and I was then went to the A plant, which we did. I went to the A plant I was hired in October, but I didn't actually go to work until February of '54.
I see. Okay, then.
As a side note, 6 months after I went to work at the A plant for a meager $45 a month increase over while I was a railroad, Baldwin Piano Company got a bigger and better new contract.
But it just held out a little longer. Well, how would you know?
That's right.
How would you know? But now, were you in the Army too?
Yes.
Okay, when did you join or draft?
Okay, let's go back. Let me try to get my years straight there. Okay, in between after I got out of the Navy and had all this railroad work, let's see, I went to Rio Grande. Essentially because I wanted to play basketball and football.
Yeah.
So one of the local educators in Sauter County, who's since moved to Florida, his name's Gilbert McNeil. He and I went to Rio Grande to play football and basketball. We went out for football, and we didn't like the idea of the coach jumping up and down on our chests when we were lying on the ground with his cleats. So we said, football wasn't for us. But anyhow, we didn't want to admit that we weren't the big stars that we thought we were going to be, so we stayed and helped out in the kitchen until school started. But I did go out for basketball, and I did make the basketball team at Rio Grande. So I stayed at Rio Grande for 2 years there with that. And one of the little interesting notes at Rio Grande was that back then they were trying to make a name for themselves, and we played. This would have been in 1948, 7, 8, and we played we played to the University of Dayton. Right,
big time?
Big time because they can't play University of Dayton now. Conference, and we played all of every small college throughout Kentucky and Indiana, and we played as far as Lawrence Tech and Detroit Tech in Michigan, because they were, and we played all of Steubenville and different colleges. They were trying to attract students. Mm-hmm. So as a result, they did. Our one claim to fame was we beat Wilberforce College 118 to 116 in a triple overtime.
Wow. So that's written down somewhere.
Yes.
Okay, that'd be 1948.
Yes. But we come along, and the Sauter County draft department didn't look too kindly at my experience in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't accept that it was active duty, even though it was active duty, and I had the discharge and all. They said, well, all I did was go to college, so I should be drafted. So that was in the last part of 49. 49, yes, and all through the early part of 1950, I fought with them, back and forth, back and forth. Of course, you got to remember, I was still young then. I was 23 then, and finally, I said, okay, I've had it. I'll go. I'll go.
They talked you into it.
Well, I could see where it's a stalemate. I really fought hard and heavy with it, and even had
you
drafted Washington. So I was drafted.
Now, was that before the Korean War started, or something?
I can't remember when the Korean War actually is. I think it was June of 50. So then I was drafted right after that.
Okay.
See, that's when it got hot and heavy.
Oh, yeah.
See, then, so because it all through. Let's see. I went in October the 30th, 1950. Drafted.
Where'd you do your boot camp?
I was sent to the activation of a National Guard unit in Southern California.
Wow.
This was the 40th Infantry Division, and this was they had activated the National Guard in Southern Cal, which is made up of possibly all the units from the bottom of California clear up to maybe San Bernardino. No, not San Bernardino, Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara, I'd say.
It's unusual to have an Ohio boy then in that.
Yes. Yes, we will.
Did they write you about that?
As I said, as we've gone over before, I'd had a little experience, and by then, as I said, was 23 years old as such, and I was immediately thrown in an infantry company, and with a 18-year-old as the master sergeant over me. This didn't set too good. I had at that given time I had a full 4 years of college, and had already what I felt had been in the Navy, and what I felt I'd done many things, but then to be put under the control of an 18, just 18 too. Let me remind, just 18 he was.
And the chemistry wasn't there.
Chemistry wasn't there at all. So I.
How long did you have to endure that?
Well, about 3 weeks, and I couldn't take it anymore. So I, being quite boldly, went to the division office and said, I'd like to speak to the commanding general, of which they immediately told me this was impossible. Absolutely impossible. Who do you think you are? There's no way. To make a long story short, though, I finally did talk to an adjutant, and I told him my dilemma, and told him my experience, and told him that I felt that I was wasted talent there. And he said, you might be in luck. And I guess I was in luck because he wasn't as experienced as he thought he was. Because in reviewing, I'd had a little stint. We have to go in retrospect now. Back, of course, the Times advertised that they had a job opening, and they would send you to Chicago and train. Expenses paid. So I interviewed, and I got the job. And the job was with Household Finance.
Oh, really?
With Household Finance.
The same group that we know and love today.
Yeah. So their office was in Chicago, and they trained all their outside people in Chicago. And so I went to Chicago for a week, all expenses paid, to train on how to collect. Our one little gitch there was that as the final exam, they gave you a debit card, as they called, where people owed, and you had to go find this person and try to collect from them. The alternative, if you couldn't collect money, this is household finances stated rule, was then you bring them back to the office, and they have to make arrangements with the manager to pay that money. People were quite willing then to do that, but so I had to go into the slums of Chicago, find my person, and bring him back to the office. I did. Oh yes, willingly. Well, not willingly, but I kind of coaxed him, and I bought his lunch, and I bought him one drink of wine, and also
that was a kicker, right?
That was a kicker there, But in these, I mentioned that this experience that I had and the training I had in Chicago, not saying how long or anything, but in Household Finance Corporation. So he immediately said, "You're in luck," he said, "because we have to put together our finance office for the division, and it hasn't been done yet because it just activated." So I said, okay, I've had all these accounting courses in college, all these business courses in college and all, and plus this other experience of which I overlated just a little bit on it. And I went down, and I was immediately transferred the next day.
Great.
To the division office from the infantry company to the division office. And it was about 3 weeks after that, or 2 weeks after that, it was before Christmas, the commanding general came into our office, and I have associated his name with a local man, so I can remember it, and his name was Huddleston. And he called us together, and at that time we had 40 people in the finance office and 3 officers. And he says, effective now, he says, I'm going to have a meeting today, and he said that it's going to be, and I'll tell this later, and he says, but I want to tell you fellas, he says that we are going overseas, and he says there's one thing that I feel is the most important thing in going overseas, and he said, is you fellas and your office. He said, because if there's anything that will make people disgruntled is that their family needs money and they can't give it to them, or they can't get their money because of some glitch, or they can't get paid when they're supposed to be paid. And he says, all I ask is that my men never, ever have an excuse that your office didn't get one of them paid. And you're relieved of all duty from here on. So as a result, I went through one little required training exercise with a gas mask and this and that, but other than that, nothing. And went overseas initially. He called the next day, he called them together, and he said, this is the first time since he called the whole division together, which was a total of 18,000 people. He says this is the first time since World War II that we've amassed one division in one field at one time. He says we're going to Japan for further training, and then we will end up in Korea. He said some of you are going to die. He said you're going to be laying in mud. He said you're going to be fighting. He said it's not going to be fun, but we're going. End of conversation.
Quite a morale booster there. Some of you are going to die.
Oh, yes. He stated that. Yes. Some of you are going to die.
Well, and then is that what happened? You went to Japan then?
So this was in December. It was the headlines, and we got shipped out. We left. I can't remember the days. Sometime the latter part of January of 1951. Okay. We went to Japan.
How long were you?
And we went to Japan, and we loaded up at Presidio. We called a train to Presidio. We were stationed, by the way, at Camp Cook, which is now Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, which is it's real close to above Santa Barbara. So we went to Presidio in San Francisco to load out. The one thing that stands out in my mind, and as at the very last minute, as we were lined up to get on the troop ships, one of the fellows in the barracks next to us got pulled off, and he didn't have to go overseas. And his name happened to be Andre Previn.
Oh,
great pianist. Because the band was in the barracks next to the finance.
I see.
So
the piano player got out of it.
The piano player, that he got assigned to the Presidio band. So when we mentioned movie stars, I don't have much for movie stars.
You may have signed his check or something, or paid him or something.
So we went to Japan, and we were probably, the normal, I can't remember the days, 5-6 days on the water. And we landed in Yokohama. And from Yokohama, we went by train to the northern Honshu, which is in the northern part of Japan, the camp called Sendai, in Sendai, Japan. And we stayed in Sendai and trained in... and I can't really remember when we went to Korea, but I think it was in December of that year.
December of 51.
Yeah, December of 51.
Were you married by that time?
No. And my experience in Japan was quite quite good.
Did you were single then?
Oh yes.
What was your when you got out of the Army? What was your rank?
Well, I was of course they had the permanent ranks and the temporary, but I was on pay as temporary master sergeant.
I see.
As temporary master sergeant, but I was permanent corporal.
What
the state?
What large is Sendai? What do you say? Sendai. Is that near a large city?
Well, it is a large city.
It is.
It's northern. It's probably the largest in northern Japan. In the Honshu territory there.
I see. How long were you in Japan?
So I was in Japan. We were in there probably 11 months.
What does an unmarried Army man do when he goes on leave?
When he goes on leave, he takes
Sendai.
He usually goes on leave to Tokyo. To Tokyo, and takes advantage of all the hot baths, and the massage parlors, and so forth.
What do you know there?
All the massage parlors there. But
you guys souvenirs for Japan?
Oh, I think there's probably some little ones. I was very upset. My mother, we just sent her a rest home, and I had given her some of the 7 gods of Japan, some ivory cut figures, and she must have given 2 of them away. I found only 5. But in Japan, we had a rather unique experience, and the truly uniqueness of it is something that probably no one realizes unless they've been associated with the military overseas. And this military is I assume the same thing is happening today, that they do not let, in a major conflict, do not let military personnel have American dollars overseas. So as a result, in World War II, they had issued a military script, and you were paid not in American dollars, but in military script. Of course, the money that was sent home in dollars, and the subsistence checks that went to the families and all was in dollars. But so the purpose of this was that they didn't want American currency floating around with the number of personnel that were overseas. So the military script was what was issued, what all the people in Japan were paid with. So I got a warning at 10 o'clock at night at a meeting that the next day we were going to change all the script in our division. That likewise, all the military personnel the next morning, there would be no one permitted off of their bases the next morning. All bases would be locked up in all of Japan, and no one would be permitted, and everyone except the very few that might be away to some resort, would have to exchange their military script that day for the new military script or else lose it. Now, the purpose of this was that the prostitution and the black market and all of them had so much of our military script that they wanted to leave them holding the bag. So I knew about this at 10 o'clock at night, and of course the next morning they announced it that everything was locked down and out, and so immediately our office went to work. We had boxes of new money, and we had all of the officers from the various companies throughout the division that had to collect the money from their men, come to our office, exchange it for the new money, dollar for dollar, and take it back out. We took the old money. So we made this during the day. At our camp, there were, well, it was big enough to house roughly the 18,000 in the division, even though some of them would be out on bivouac or this or that. But it was in a compound, and the compound that would be completely around this camp was lined with girls and boys and men and women begging for them, the servicemen inside, to take their script for anything, and just give them anything back for it, because they immediately got the word of what had happened, and it'd be worthless, absolutely worthless there the next day. But we got all this changed, and in our division we had roughly 50-some people who were, of course, we knew they wouldn't have $20,000 in their pocket or 10, but they might have $50 or 40. That was a way to maybe one of the resort towns, and they come back from leave, and then we made the exchanges for the very, very few, under very extenuating circumstances that we would approve there.
Do you have the old script?
No.
Never keep
no, I don't. We, a very nice government unique accounting system. We were given X number of dollars to exchange for the X number of dollars based on the payrolls, etc., that they had spent none. And as we got the old script, we put it in rifle boxes, which were roughly 5 foot long and a foot by foot high, foot wide. Wooden rifle boxes, loaded the money up in there, and the major and I, we caught a train with all these boxes of money, which was worthless then, took it to Tokyo and dumped it in an incinerator.
Okay.
No accounting of it.
No accounting.
No accounting. Just dumped it in the incinerator.
Millions and millions of worthless dollars.
Millions and millions of worthless dollars. And as an afterthought, the only chance a person would have had of making $1 million. But there were people, the local citizens and all, who they hurt them real bad. They hurt them real bad.
How did the Japanese treat you when you were over there?
They treated us very well, very well. There were in all of the towns, there were sections where they weren't receptive to the servicemen. There were sections, but I was fortunate because I was able to loaf in those sections. Because they knew that I was in the finance office.
Oh, they got you right in.
Our emblem showed that we were in finance, and they knew that I was in the finance office, and so I was able to come and go places that none of the others could go. Well, people in our group could go, but none of the others.
Would that be because if they'd seen crossed rifles and then
infantry? Yeah. This was a
diamond.
Diamond with inward marks on there. But my only true venture into the unknown as such was I decided that I would climb Mount Fuji. And in going up Mount Fuji, of course, there was several of us fellows that went up. And in going up Mount Fuji, you buy a cane at the bottom, and you get your cane notched at each station as you go up. And when it's completely notched, you're at the top. Well, needless to say, each station sold a little beer. And with the altitude as you went up Mount Fuji, we didn't make it to the top. So my cane was never notched to completion.
Did you still have that cane?
No, I left the cane.
Oh, gosh. Well, it sounds like then that Japan was interesting, but you had to leave.
Yeah, we had to leave. Okay, we got orders to go to Korea. The 40th Infantry Division is made up of 3 infantry companies, and well, of course, artillery and all the others too, but three major companies there. And they were shipped out on 3 different boats, and this must have been, I guess, security-wise, shipped on 3 different boats. Of course, we were in the northern part, and if you look, you have to go down south and around to go to Korea. But we arrived in January. In January, probably the coldest time I have ever been in. They unloaded. They got in the bay of Seoul, and that's where they unloaded the troops in Seoul. And they took them ashore on boats and such. And they kept taking them ashore, and pretty soon there wasn't too many people left on the boat. And the one boat had pulled out, and the next one was getting ready to pull out, and we were on the 3rd boat. And the next thing I know is that by then I was section head of the finance office. That the officer comes to me and says, "Joe says this boat has to leave."
Really?
And we've only got this one little craft here to go ashore. There was 3 officers going in that, and we don't have to send the boat back for you. I said, fine. He said, well, you leave your 2 enlisted in there with you there. And he said, there'll be 3 of you. So they unloaded us on a raft in the middle of Seoul Harbor. With the pay records were kept in rifle boxes, which I said before the size of them. And these pay records just fit down in the rifle boxes, just like a filing cabinet, with the pay records of the 18,000 plus men, and roughly $500,000 in script. And we went toot, and the boat pulled away, and we were anchored in the middle of the harbor in below freezing weather by ourselves, 3 of us, with this money and all the pay records for the division. The captain of the boat decided that he had to leave. He said, I can't. This is after our officers were gone, but he said, I have to leave. I'm leaving. This is it. So here we were in the middle of the harbor. We took our from shore. Oh, we must have been a good half a mile.
Wow.
Good half a mile.
Cold weather, too.
Cold weather, we stacked the pay records. It finally got to the point where we had no heat. We stacked the pay records up on one end to keep the waves and the water from hitting over us as much as we could. Of course, the pay records were in plastic inside there, they had some other name for it then, a vellum, and came in. And we waited. And we were freezing, literally freezing to death. We thought we were gone. We couldn't have pulled the trigger if we wanted, even we had our arms out and all. So pretty soon, here we saw the light, and here comes a little tugboat. And the tugboat pulled up along the side, but then we had no idea whether we were goners or what. We never even thought of the money, even though we had that much money. We just were without ourselves, not knowing what to do. And I can recall looking at that tugboat and seeing the boiler, and there was a crack in the boiler I could have laid my 2 hands in. Okay. Into the firebox. I mean, it was just wide open there. And they were evidently South Koreans, and they could not speak one word of English. And neither could the 3 of us. Not one word of Korean. So we were at their mercy, but they hooked to us and towed us to shore. I don't know what instructions they had around, but they towed us to shore, and I was able to commandeer a truck and ask questions, and they said, well, here's where you're supposed to go. So we went to a bombed-out building and pitched up some tents, and we got out of the weather a little bit. And then we moved, after only 2 days there.
How long were we out in the harbor there?
Oh, we was out in the harbor a good 3.5 hours.
Okay.
At least 3.5 hours. Because time enough for the huge boat.
Nobody missed it.
Well, never could find out really what happened. So-and-so was so-and-so, and they advised so-and-so, our officers immediately after they got there, the Port Authority, that we were to be picked up immediately, and the urgency of it, and not because of the personnel, but because of all the records. I mean, there was no duplicate copies of pay records. They were in St. Louis. The information after they were paid was sent to St. Louis. So the maximum they couldn't have retrieved records out of St. Louis probably under 6 days or 8, at least there.
So you made it into Seoul anyway.
Yeah, so we made it into Seoul and got partially warm, and then, as I said, in 2 days moved toward the front to a place called Chuncheon, and there we set up a tent city.
Okay.
And we set up a tent city and set up an office, and of course headquarters was there, the general was there, public information offices was there. Well, just general, all the headquarters behind the lines was there. And then we started the gruesome business of my little bit of grief in retrospect there, because that infantry division they had thrown me into was the 223rd, and I would get back word from this person signed to the 223rd, because after the clerks in the office would pass through, and immediately, if there were dependents, they would dispatch the pay records immediately if there were dependents involved, for the insurance and the other pay records and all that for the dependents. But if they weren't, no dependents involved, sometimes it'd be a week before we got them there. Very, very cruel and gruesome. We all had on our desks about I'd say a 3-inch by 1-inch rubber stamp. It said, had initials KIA on it, and that was a killed in action. That was the end of that pay record. Just stamped across the front of it. Pretty cruel. Yeah. Killed in action. But as I said, I saw some, and
this is still with the 40th.
Oh yeah, still with the same one. Yes.
What's his 232nd?
That was the infantry companies. Yeah, the infantry regiments there in there. Okay. But as I'd see, it would spark a light, and I will say this now, just because that I was familiar with some of them, and I'd see a Valdez come through or this or that, because Southern California was made up of a lot of people from Mexico, and immigrants from Mexico, and also they had Spanish names, and so as I saw the Spanish names come through, I knew where they were from there. We lived a pretty good life. We had the officers were giving us a ration of whiskey, and the enlisted men got a ration of of course they had to pay for it, of a half case of beer a week.
And the infantry was up on the line.
The infantry was up on the line, yes. Up on the line. But the procedure then was that we would make all the pay records. We'd make our separate captions and this and that. And the officer in charge of the company would come back and get the money and the pay records, of which had to be signed with an individual. And he would take it to the front and get them to sign it and pay them and then bring it back. And there was always money that had to come back, because there was money that he couldn't give out because they'd be killed.
You mean a soldier right on the line would get paid? Have money in their pocket.
Have money. That was this. As I said to begin with, that general was so insistent on this. This happened. He was an old World War II man from France and Germany and all that, and he said that's the most important thing. That man wants money. Did they want money? Yes, they did. Did they? They did. Yes,
even though you're up there fighting for your life.
Payday. It's payday.
You want The money.
It's payday.
Well, he knew what he was talking about.
It's payday. Yes, he did. He knew what he's talking about. It's hard to imagine, as you said there, he wants money in his pocket, but yes, he does. And they would go along the line, and the officer of that company would make sure, because he might have only maybe 50 people in his company, and so he'd have the sheets, and then maybe were 15 on a sheet, and he'd have the money that we had out from each name of what they would get. But another thing that's why you have to remember that some of these fellas in the infantry companies, I'm not saying they're tougher than we are, but some of them had a little bad luck, let's say. And some of them would get court-martialed, and some of them would get on some benches and get in trouble and so forth. And we had many, many men from the time we left San Francisco, period, until I left there, that got only $10 a month.
Why is that?
That because they would owe fines and different things, and yes, and different things. If they would be said, they'd lose clothing. They'd sell the clothing, and they finally got wise to that. They didn't lose it; they'd sell it. They gamble a lot. Yes, they gamble a lot. And they got so the minimum pay that you could give a person in the military was $10 a month. So a lot of these up on the line were just a flat $10 a month. I've had many a man in Japan come to me, and I was at that time. I was authorized to give partial pays if I read the hardship letter or something and saw that I felt that it was justified. In other words, John Doe's wife would say, well, the kid broke his arm and this and that, and my father run away with this or that, and I have no money. Can't you send me a little bit over and above her regular check that she was getting from the government? So they would come in and they would want partial pay because of this hardship to send their wife $25 or something. So
when you set up at that one place there, did you ever move? Did the company advance or
No. They were up at the line. They were clear up. No, we went to Chuncheon, and that was it.
You stayed there.
We stayed there.
Okay.
How
long were you there in Korea?
Well, let's see. I was there probably 6.5 months. I got. My father was sick, and since I was the only child, I got an emergency leave to come home, and since it was winding down, it's kind of like I was lucky enough in World War II. Mm-hmm. It was winding down in, so I didn't have to go back. Mm-hmm. But I did, believe it or not, as I said, young person, I went to the front lines one time. Mm-hmm. I decided that I just had to go up to the 38th parallel and look across the binoculars to see them over there with their guns pointed at us. And so I did, and there was shells bursting around, nothing real close, but I could have been unlucky. It would have been my fault if I had. But
you wanted to do that.
But I wanted to do it. We had one man killed, and
a man killed
in our headquarters group.
Oh, I see.
And I still can't. Well, I guess I'm too far into the technology today to try to look back and say how dense we were in technology then. But a plane came in, a little crummy little old plane, nothing special, and we were playing softball and shot him out in the field.
Huh. Shot him?
Yeah, shot him.
A plane? An enemy plane?
An enemy plane, yes, came in. No fancy plane, just I'd compare it to a Piper Cub. They asked me what I thought it was. I said, I don't know, Piper Cub, just a little plane. And came in and shot him.
It wasn't a mistake by one of ours.
No, it was an enemy. It was an enemy plane. And we look now, we say, gee whiz, the response, of course, we just now got into that response isn't as fast as we thought it was. With the one they tried to head off, actually got the news from going to Washington. Yeah. But, and it flew away.
Well, I guess they accomplished their mission.
So, hey, I got this emergency leave.
This might sound like a, did you like Korea? I mean, as opposed to Japan.
Well, of course, it was all there was nothing. Nothing there. There was no place there was no fancy places to go. I mean, there was nothing there. It was all bombed out. Even Seoul was bombed out and all, so there was nothing to do but you gambled, you drank, and you worked.
How did the people treat you there?
Oh, very good. I mean, they bowed and curtsied and everything else.
Have you ever been back?
No.
Ever been back to Japan?
No.
You ever thought about it?
Oh, yes. Yes, I thought about it. Yes. But no, there was nothing to do but to work, and as I look back now and hear different comments about people in the military and all, we worked possibly sometimes 8, 10, 12 hours a day on those pay records in our office. We worked that much. I mean, there was nothing else to do, so we worked. you could only drink. You only got so much beer. And by the way, the only way we had of cooling the beer was in the river.
Oh, really?
In the river.
The water was cooling up.
Well, it was cooler than setting out. So we would take one guy out of the office, and he'd go down with 4 or 5 cases, and he'd sit there with his rifle and guard the beer while watch the water run over. Try to cool it there.
Well, after you, Sally got a hardship leave, you said you're fine.
Yeah.
And you came back and.
I left Chuncheon, and I flew from Chuncheon. As I left Chuncheon, I had my duffel bag, and of course I had my pay records, so I was able to handle them. And I knew the ins and outs of worrying about any clothing missing or anything like that. So my last thing, as I was on the airstrip, loaded in the plane, and it's just like the old MASH today. I kicked off my duffel bag to a little kid there and said, "Here, take it." And I went with just strictly my billfold and my pay record out of Korea.
And what you had on your back?
What I had on my back. Razor and everything. Even a new watch was in it. I said, "Let it go."
You have any souvenirs from Korea?
No, I don't think so.
Where's your gun?
Yeah. Oh, I do. I think I do have a hat.
A hat from Korea?
I think I do have my hat. Yes, I do. That has the emblem, logo, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it was a sunburst, the 40th Infantry Division.
What was the name of the sunburst? There was a 40th. Did they have a nickname? Like Screaming Eagles and stuff like that?
No, just a sunburst, I think.
That was her.
Yeah, just a sunburst.
So you got
see the big when we went to Japan, they were quite receptive to us coming over there because they had the 25th Infantry Division there for many years. In fact, the 25th Infantry Division had taken up residency with probably 40% of the locals. And they were all pulled out. You've heard of the problems that they had in Korea, how they practically got wiped out over there. So they had pulled that out, and so they were tickled to death to get a new division in that part where we went to.
Well, when you got back, did you come by plane or boat?
I came by plane because it was emergency leave, and I flew into Tokyo, and I stayed in Tokyo only, I think it was about 1 day, 1.5 days, and I called the plane out, went from Tokyo to Guam, and from Guam to Honolulu, I think it was Guam or Wake, to Guam, and from Guam to Honolulu, and then Honolulu, San Francisco, and San Francisco to Louisville. Then I called a bus from Louisville.
When were you discharged from there?
I'll be honest, I can't remember. It's the latter part of let's see, it'd be in 52, when I 52, the latter started 52. Must have been October 52 or something like that.
Have you kept in touch with any of your friends from the service?
I made one call to the major over our finance office. He lived in San Francisco, and that's the only one.
When was that?
Well, I called him after I got back.
Oh, okay.
I called him because he left before I left, and he left on a boat, and I had to call him back because I called his wife when I was in San Francisco and told her he's on his way.
So that was 50 years ago, and you haven't seen or heard about any of those things?
No. I see occasionally in the local paper people who were, a few of the locals were drafted back with me, and I don't know what direction they went.
Are you in any organizations, military, veteran?
Well, I belong to the American Legion. I'm a life member of the American Legion.
Did you ever see anyone famous? You saw Andre
Andre Previn, yeah.
Any generals like Eisenhower or Midway or Arthur?
No, never saw any of them.
Okay.
None of them.
Is there anything else you want to tell me? I mean, you got any tattoos you want to talk about?
No tattoos.
You mean you were in the Navy?
I stayed away from that.
Okay.
See, while I was in Japan, I had a lot of how would I compare it now? Well, special duty. I had a lot of special duty because I will say this. I quickly got accepted in the office, and as I said, I left the master sergeant because I was over the office, and for I was as high as you go as a listed man. But I believe in working and getting the job done. But if we had a artillery group that would say, this is how I ended up at Mount Fuji. Because, see, Mount Fuji was way down from where we were at. We had an artillery group that went to Mount Fuji to practice artillery.
Hi there.
Artillery.
We're having a good time.
Yeah. And in practicing the artillery, of course, all that I did was go down to to make sure that I went down maybe 2 weeks before payday and to be there in case they had any problems with their allowances going home, and to make sure they got paid. Mm-hmm. So I would just be in an office and keep the office open half a day and for maybe 3 weeks, and that was it.
I see.
And so I had a lot of good duty. A lot of good duty.
After that, then after you came back, you were discharged. Is that when you went to work for the Hale plant?
No, I went back to this railroad job.
Back to railroad?
Yeah, back to the railroad job. Yes. I couldn't make my mind up whether I wanted to go to back to school or to the railroad. I thought, well, I better make a little money. So that's how I ended up. I had stayed on the seniority list. How I ended up with a regular job, and that's when I went to Winchester, Ohio. I immediately came back and went to that in Newtown. So
when did you meet your wife?
Oh my goodness, we must have been married in about 58, something like that. But no, then, like I say, then I went to the plant, and I had the dubious honor of being the first person that was ever laid off of the atomic energy plant.
First person ever laid off.
First person.
Did they give you a little medal or anything? My stepfather worked there, and he lost his job in 1960.
Well, then see, he was close, see, because I went in 54, and see, they had one little section they ordered up, and I went up there as a section head of office services, and they had, there's always cutbacks in the government, always. So they have to make a move. And this one fellow and I didn't really see eye to eye, and he just called me in one day, and he said, I've been there 2 years. He says, Joe, he says, I'm sorry. He said, we're going to have a layoff the first part of the year. And says, you're going to have to go. And I said, what? I said, you're hiring. He said, that's right. But he says, we're going to have to go. He said, if you can find something else, he said, that's okay. So I found something else.
Yeah.
I found something else up there. I never was laid off, but I was actually told that but no. So I worked for an individual for probably 10 years up there, and then I went into the plant manager's office and took over the budget for the plant after that to save that capacity for the end. And it's a good thing because I would have probably been gone because I never did get with the age of computers.
You didn't?
I chose not to go to school back in 1990 and 89 and all, and let the people under me go to learn the computers.
Now you play golf.
I said I can still do it with a pencil. Yeah. So
well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, that's
we covered the waterfront.
We covered the waterfront, except I did have a big long tenure of about a year and a half of going to as soon as Ohio University came to Portsmouth.
Did you go to the branch?
I went to the branch for a year and a half. Of course, you got to remember then that this was being paid for by someone else, and I could see no reason of not going since they opened up. So while I was working,
get veterans benefits.
Yeah. While I was working.